I think the most me and my partner ever sold on our table was $88,000 on our table in one night. And I once saw a course doing $70,000 a month on how to do a handstand.
What?
Yeah. Making $100 million is super hard, but like there's not a single business or single industry that cannot do $1 million or $2 million a year. I think there's huge opportunity for high-end passages rehab. I would bet, because casinos have to pay money to gambling addiction every year.
Welcome to the Kerner office. As promised, this is part 2 of my interview with James Camp. You heard part 1 2 days ago. You don't have to listen to part 1 first. They don't really go together. But if you love part 2, go back and listen to part 1 and share it with a friend while you're at it. Enjoy.
So earlier I said I own a soccer website and I saw the writing on the wall with sports betting. I made a lot of money in the legal cannabis industry. Not a lot of money. I had a win in the legal cannabis industry years ago by playing ancillary to it. We didn't touch the plant. We're in financial news, newsletters around cannabis equities as they were exploding. I would say there's a huge opportunity in rehab for sports betting that's going to come our way. Huge, huge, huge opportunity for rehab.
Oh, there you go.
I think that COVID basically showed us that everyone's a degenerate gambler. Retail came into Robinhood because sports betting wasn't around. It became equities markets, became sports betting. I see it in crypto. You see everyone wants to gamble. Gambling is on a huge rise. And once it becomes federally legal in the United States, which it's going to, because there's too much money in that, and it's already state by state falling down, down, down. It's
coming to Dallas eventually.
Yeah, there's going to be a huge group of guys and men and women, I think particularly young men, if you were talking about targeting ads, young men who have lost everything and are addicted to gambling. And I think there's probably a huge opportunity for high-end passages rehab. But I think that if you wanted to go lower, you could probably do online communities. You could probably do in-person communities, $50 a month, $100 a month, $200 a month. Newsletter based around getting clean from gambling addiction. And I think if you really want to get weird with it, and I don't know how to do this, but this is my sort of weird business brain thinking, I would bet, because casinos have to pay money to gambling addiction every year. That's part of, as their casino licenses in Vegas, at least, they have to take some of their revenue and it has to be put towards gambling addiction every year. I wouldn't be surprised if there's a weird business to be made where you get subsidized.
Partnering with casinos.
Yeah. And that you get subsidized through, do you see what I'm saying? Where like, because I also built in a different life async telemedicine.
We have to allocate this much of our budget to rehab facilities. So who are we going to partner with?
Yes. And when we used to run async telemedicine funnels, if you look at, I use it, finasteride, if you use hymns on your hair, right? You run an async dude, this is going to be a little niche and esoteric, but hopefully someone hears the magic in this. Thought about this. I would run an async gambler's addiction funnel, right? You fill out a form. If you get approved by the doctor and asynchronously in the same way that you get your ED medication, you get your hair medication, you don't actually talk to a doctor, fill out a form. It gets sent to a doctor. They get forms all day. Yes, no, yes, no, yes, no. And then the insurance pays for that, right? Hypothetically. So my thought is there's a weird puzzle to put together here where you're running ads for asynchronous funnels in which you can get approved for subsidized gambling addiction.
What do you mean by asynchronous?
What I mean is that you don't actually have to talk to someone to get you approved for your gambling addiction treatment.
Okay.
That gets subsidized by the government. What I mean is that you fill out a questionnaire and it asynchronously gets sent off to someone that approves it yes or no. This is how telemedicine really took off. This is how Hims and Hers and Roman, they all took off. But you didn't actually have to go and talk to a doctor about your ED. You went through a type form, basically.
They Silicon Valley'd it.
Yes, it's Silicon Valley. You went through a type form and async as opposed to, I don't know what the other word would be for non-async, but non-async. So opposed to actual one-on-one real-time conversation with a doctor, you fill out a form and it gets sent off and somebody approves it. So that's what I mean by async, right? Asynchronous.
Yeah. Okay.
And so what I mean is you're running ads for gambling addiction. Person fills out the form because they want to go through gambling rehab. If they hit certain qualifications, it's free for them, because it's subsidized by the government, because a doctor, an addiction specialist, has said, Chris has this gambling addiction. He needs $3,000 of rehab. That gets subsidized by the casinos because the casinos are paying that. Do you see like the little flywheel I'm trying to make here?
Yeah.
And I think that if that could work, you all of a sudden are running a funnel as a marketer, as a business in which you're getting someone free rehab help, right? They're getting them actual free help. It's actually a $3,000 rehab program that's getting paid for by the casinos. And so you're making more like $3,000 a customer. So you're happy to go spend $100 acquiring said customer or client. That's esoteric and weird, but that's one I've thought about before.
No, I like it. The optimistic take on this is like, hey, they're going to gamble anyway. So why not be in the business of getting them unaddicted from gambling? And the pessimistic take is, what are the incentives going to be? Are you just going to be incentivized for them to never be cured? It's kind of like the private prison system, right?
Yeah.
Like private prisons are not incentivized to get people out of jail. So it's like on the surface level, it's like, wow, this is good. We, free market is stepping in and helping these guys rehabilitate. And then you dive in a little deeper. It's like, oh, this is actually pretty crappy.
Yeah, because it's talk about lobbyists, right? So you wonder why they're lobbying against cannabis legality, for example, right? Because you know what I mean? They're like, in that scenario, or like in this scenario, it's like you're obviously then getting subsidized by people that are lobbying to allow more gambling, right? Like, anyway, that's why I wanted to caveat that idea with like, I recognize there are some qualms with it.
It reminds me of like, I just keep coming back to first principles. And I was thinking about junk food the other day. Like, I firmly believe in 50 years, we're going to have peanut M&Ms and they're going to taste the exact same. I don't know if the ingredients will be the same, but it is just like 100 years ago, we didn't have junk food, right? Yeah. And now we have it and we're addicted to it. So will there be a healthier version of peanut M&Ms? Sure. Will there still be peanut M&Ms? Absolutely. Right? Like 10 years from now, people will still be addicted to their phones, right? But there will be even more solutions to not be addicted to your phones. Like I knew a guy that opened a restaurant in a mall, and he opened a healthy restaurant. And his thesis was, there are no healthy restaurants in this mall. It's all Panda Express and Chipotle, all this garbage stuff. So we're going to be the only one. And he failed, right? Because it's like, that wasn't the place for healthy restaurants. Like, is there room for a salad restaurant? Yeah. But you know what? Like, most people want junk food. And in 50 years, we're still going to be eating junk food. Even if like everything's trending more healthy, we're still going to want to eat M&Ms every now and then. And so I think of like addiction and gambling, like you can ride the wave of helping solve these problems, or you can ride the wave of, inventing new iPhone apps so we can look at our phones longer. And either way, like just stick to first principles and you'll win.
There's a couple big lessons I think that I've learned in 36, and I've failed at a lot of stuff and managed to eke out a couple wins, a lot of luck behind those as well. But like, I think fighting, I'm a huge
human nature.
Fighting human nature is wrong. I think that I've learned to, like, as much as it hurts my ego, be very okay to be proven wrong by data. Like, I don't really like data doesn't care about your opinion. You know what I mean? Like, I don't care what you think people want to buy. You know what I mean? Like, if this is what people are buying, this is what people are buying. Another firm belief here is that to go back to my ad tech example, unless you're trying to really create a new industry, that actually competition is often like a pretty healthy marker of a healthy industry where there's opportunity, right? Like, no one's like, oh my God, there's an accounting firm that already exists. I shouldn't become an accountant. You know what I mean? Like, no, there's tens of thousands, and it just means that there's a market for it.
I get people all the day like, hey, here's my idea. What do you think? I should do this? I'm like, well, is anyone else doing it? No one else doing it. Don't do it then.
Yeah.
Don't do it. Why would you do it?
Yeah.
You think that there's a reason there. Why is no one doing it?
Well, and I find often that with like media businesses, for example, because I've dealt a lot with the media space, right? So people think it's all zero sum. Like people used to say to me like, oh, why would I use a newsletter as an example? I remember I once had a conversation with someone at a boxing newsletter. They're like, well, why would I start a boxing newsletter? Like, someone's going to read ESPN instead. And I was like, you're just assuming that like people's attention is zero sum, right? They're like, just because someone watches Chris on Instagram doesn't mean they're watching James. That's just not how it works, right? Like, if you're really interested in entrepreneur content, you're probably following 10 entrepreneurs, right? And there's probably a rotating cast of it in which some people get replaced and some people are new. And, if you're reading a newspaper, like, especially in today's world, maybe back in the day when you got newspapers delivered only, you said, I only read the Times, or I only read, I grew up in New York, so it's all New York papers, or I only read the Post, because that's what I pay to come to my house every day. But in a world where there's like a glut of information the way it is, no, you're going to read lots of different things. You might read 3 newsletters about something you're really passionately interested about. If I eat at McDonald's, it doesn't mean I don't eat at In-N-Out sometimes. If I eat at Sweet Green, it doesn't mean I don't eat at Tender Green sometimes, right? And so I think that like one of the biggest, which then puts you in a tough place where I'm at in life. And I've actually had a conversation with someone earlier, which is that like, I'm going to say this is like sort of my hot take, but that like making $100 million is super hard. Not that I've ever made $100 million, but I've done some big things, and a huge amount of luck is required. But like making a couple $1,000,000, there's not a single business or single industry that cannot do $1 million or $2 million a year.
Yeah.
And that
everything can scale to that.
Anything can scale to $1 million. I once saw a course doing $70,000 a month on how to do a handstand, like
what?
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
We just live in
there's 8 billion people.
Because there's 8 billion people, and it's just not impossible. So, and then making $1 million or $2 million a year, saturation is essentially a myth. That's where I'm going with that, right?
Yeah.
So like,
I've said the same thing.
Yeah.
Nothing's oversaturated. I've said that on
nothing is over. Yes, if you say to me, I want to make $100 million a year, there are certain industries in which I'm going to tell you there are incumbents in the space that own them too big for you to really play in it at that level, unless you're going to really try and overtake it. But we're talking about you making $1 million or $2 million a year. There is infinite opportunity, and saturation is a myth. I really, really believe that.
And I hear people all the time saying, well, like, here's how you do it. You copy something that's working and then you do it a little differently. And I would take it a step further and say, no, just copy something that's working.
I was going to say, take it a step further, like take it a step less.
Yeah. You can do it differently. Right? Maybe you can do it better. Maybe if you try to do it differently, you do it worse. You have a thesis about this thing and, well, if I just add this feature to it, then it's better. Maybe you think that and it's actually worse. So maybe the lower risk option is to do it the exact same. And just remember, I wonder if all 8 billion people on the earth have heard about this thing. If no, then just do the same thing.
100%. Like, I'll tell you, this reminds me of like, there's a couple of things in my life that I found recently were just the most applicable things ever. And one is the midwit curve, the bell curve of the midwit.
Yes, I think about it every day, every single day.
So applicable to all of life, right? And what's funny is I was talking to a friend who has sold some bigger businesses than I have, and I was saying to him, because we're talking about this paradox of choice. Once you realize what you and I just said, Chris, like once that clicks for you, you realize you come into this paradox of choice because you're like, oh, I can actually do anything. And I don't mean to sound crazy, but like within the realm of reality, and reality you and I both believe is making a couple $1 million a year, I can do anything. I can't become a doctor tomorrow because I'm not licensed to practice medicine, right? That's, I'm not going to fly because I can't break the laws of physics. But within the realm of reality, like any business I want to go build, I can do anything I want. So we were talking about that, and I told him the problem for me, and this is me being cocky, and we laughed about it. I was like, I'm not the Jedi, but I'm not the midwit. I was like, I'm the halfway in between. I was like, I'm a little smarter than the average Joe. And he goes, the funny part is, I think everyone thinks they're on the and so the irony is that is the midwit, right? Is like the midwit thinks that we are not full Jedi, but smarter than the average Joe. And so, and for anyone who's listening or watching and doesn't know what this meme is, it's a bell curve, and on the left is a caveman, in the middle is a guy who's angry because he's complaining that this won't work, and on the right is this Jedi, essentially, right? And the idea is the Jedi and the caveman get the same results, right? And so to go with what you're saying, I think the appropriate thing here is that the midwit says, oh, I need to make it different. Oh, I have to differentiate in some regard. And the Jedi and the caveman are just like, no, just copy and do the exact same thing that someone else is doing, right? And then from there, I had a conversation with a friend about how I'm always trying to be the Jedi. And he was like, dude, that's impossible. Just try and be the caveman. He's like, what's easy is being dumb. He's like, I don't know why. If you genuinely believe that the caveman and the Jedi get the same results, stop trying to be this 180 IQ and just think about what would a dumb person do here? What would the caveman do here? And the caveman says, oh, people read content on boxing. I like boxing. I write newsletter about boxing, like in that scenario.
Yeah.
And so I think that like the nugget I'm trying to get across here is that like, none of us are as smart as we think we are. It's much easier to pretend to just be an idiot and just do what an idiot would do, which is, it's a trope almost, man. But the amount of people I know that I don't think of as like wildly with like massive intellectual capacity that make good money is pretty large.
Yeah. The skill of reverse engineering and copying and looking at the web archive and like looking at newspapers.com, like that is an underrated skill. Literally like knowing how to copy another business. I interviewed a lady over the summer that has a porch pumpkins business. Did you see that tweet?
No.
She's in Dallas.
Maybe I did.
She decorates porches with pumpkins for fall, and she charges $500 to $2,500 to do it. and it's $1 million business, and $1,500 for pumpkins, and it has like 70% margins, and this goes massively viral. We're talking 20 million views across platforms, and every other comment was, "This is so stupid. This will never work. This is so stupid. This will never work." And like all the things I posted about, I've gotten more emails and texts from people that have actually started this and succeeded at it. And when I actually crunched her numbers, she had 1,500 customers, and across Houston and Dallas, there's 17 million people in Houston and Dallas. She had 1,500 customers.
Yeah.
That's nothing. That's nothing. $1 million business.
It's like we all overcomplicate, like you'll see. So everyone loves inbound sales. Oh, who doesn't love inbound sales? Which is really just a function of good marketing, right? Inbound sales are just people responding to your marketing. Outbound, people are like, cold email doesn't work. Cold calling doesn't work. I can promise you're unequivocally wrong. Cold emailing, door knocking, cold calls, they do work. And the Jedi knows it, and the caveman knows it. Because the caveman says, I want to go sell pumpkin, whatever, designing, right? I want to go sell tree lighting. I'm going to go knock on neighbor's door. Neighbors have home. I'm going to, you know what I mean? Like, I promise you to that point, you just go knock on doors and you would close clients for that 100%.
Yeah.
And the midwit, by the way, in the email one, for example, for anyone who's like watching that knows the very specific stuff, is like worried about DMARC records and who's that? And, it's like, stop worrying about how do you send 100,000 emails a month. You don't need to send how do you sell 20 a day? Because here's the reality. Sending 20 real cold emails a day that are actually structured and unique to new people is, you don't have to worry about inboxing. You don't got to worry. There's none of that. Like, it is going to work, but don't spam 20 people at once. Like, hey, do you want to buy my service? I've done a lot of cold email. My point is to bring this up is with one of the things we're about to do is strong cold outbound push. And I've done a lot of cold email before, but it was not in this way. It was not sending 50,000 emails a month, which is a different complex thing. But I used to sell $100,000 investor relations packages, ad packages for our cannabis news sites, our financial news sites in the cannabis space. You know what we would do? We'd go look at public companies in the cannabis space. I'd go look at their IR contacts, and I would go email them and make a deck for them. This is pre-Canva, so it took a little more work. We'd make a deck, email them, and we had basically a templated deck. We'd change their logo, and I'd say, hey, we'd love to offer you this. And you email them, and then you follow up.
Yeah.
And you go to a conference, and you try and meet them and shake their hand, and you call them. And maybe your sales cycle is really 6 months instead of a one-call close, which everyone wants to get into.
It's usually longer than you think. Yep.
And usually longer than you think. But like looking back on it, and ironically, bro, I wasn't even thinking of it that way. I was just a kid, 28 years old, and I was just like, oh, that's how we're going to sell. That's our customer right there. And now it's like, I was a caveman. And now I think, oh, it needs to be structured. What CRM are we using? CRM, I was using Excel. It was, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
Yep.
It was really simple.
We're using Apple Notes. We're using Excel.
Yeah,
Google Docs.
exactly. And we were selling $200,000 packages that way. The only difference was that we had like a unique offering that we were presenting in a unique way, right? Which was IR to cannabis companies through our, the problem for that, I don't know if you see it, but my Instagram DMs and my Twitter DMs, the problem is, brief story, I used to work in nightclubs. Sold this little ad network when I was 20.
All right. If you are watching this clip right now, you are watching this on YouTube. And if you are a fan of podcasts, please check out my podcast while you're at it, because sometimes I have podcasts that aren't on YouTube and sometimes I have YouTubes that aren't on podcasts. So check out the Kerner Office on any podcast platform, or you can go to tkopod.com. Also, my newsletter, we'll throw that in there. There are no ads. It's weekly. It's different content than my podcast and YouTube. Newsletter.chrisjkerner.com. You'll see the link, and we'll see you there.
Blew that money in a nightclub and became a club promoter from 2026. I thought I was going to spend my life in nightclubs. And that's what I did. And
that's why
I remember at one point we signed a lot. I think probably I was going to sell comedy tickets at Times Square at 15, which was the real hustle. But I remember one time we were selling bottles, right? You sell a bottle service. And this is a moment in time where I think the most me and my partner ever sold on our table was $88,000 on our table in one night. You see people drop $1 million on about crazy moment in history. Point is, we were having a difficulty with bottle sales. And so I was working at this club called One Oak, and I had this boss called Mark. Mark called me and all the other promoters into the club and was like, you guys are having a hard time selling bottles because you're all fishing in the same pond. We had a bunch of promoters who were going to the club next door, meeting people at that club next door and saying, come spend your money here. Well, now we're all fighting for the same clients, pitching them on the exact same thing, and they're already going to go to the club next door. So what I see now in my Twitter DMs and Instagram DMs is everyone is pitching me on short form video editing and cold DMing for outbound. I have 3 DMs a week easily about short form video editing. Okay, stop pitching it to creators like me or Chris. Dude, you got a bigger audience than I do for sure on Instagram. I promise you're getting tons of those pitches, right?
I don't even look in there anymore, but yes.
Yeah, because it's scary. But I'm saying go pitch that to just a totally different audience. It's not getting pitched that all the time, and you're much more likely to sell it. It's not even that you have to have a different offer, right? Anyway, although that does contradict my statement about just copying fully.
It's got to be people that are already paying for it, but aren't getting hit up for it as much. There's like a fine balance, because you don't want to go convince someone that they need a post short form and that you can edit it for them. You need people that are already believe in short form, but that aren't getting hit up all day, every day. Or, James, another thing I would say is you need to find the same people that you're DMing on Instagram, but cold email them. Because if I'm getting hit up in my DMs all day about short form video editing, but I get a cold email, it's just different. The contrast is different. Or on you message them on Strava, right? Or you message them on some random platform.
Dude, I love that. Yeah, 100%.
Venmo.
And send them a penny. Send them a penny. I mean, I've seen people do that with PayPal, right? You send them a penny with a note attached to it, or send them $1 with a note attached to it.
Dude, I just have this quote I keep repeating this week in my head is, the harder way is usually the better way. Like making a deck by hand, going to the conference, 6-month sales cycle instead of 1. That's the midwit meme for me, is like, working remotely is really sexy. I love it. But if you want to optimize for wealth and getting promotions, you got to get in the car and go through LA traffic. Like the harder way is usually the better way.
I'll tell you, yeah. I mean, the obstacle is the way, some real stoicism kind of stuff, right? I mean, really, really, I think to go along with that, you touched on something that I was really hammering home to a client I was doing consulting work for the other day. In person. When we were doing $2 million a year in ad packages, and yes, we're doing cold email and stuff, but I was also going to those conferences, those cannabis conferences, and meeting all those companies and shaking their hands and talking to people. And so if you're selling something that's $2,000, $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 a month, to go spend $2,000 to go to a conference and go shake some hands, it's just a game changer. It's just a total.
It is.
People don't want to do it. So to your point, if I'm much more likely to have a conversation with someone that I met at a party at a conference that I gave my number to and had a good time with, and we were hanging out. Like, dude, we should talk about marketing stuff sometime. I'm much more likely, dude, hopefully you're not going to pitch me on this, but if at the end, if a week from now you hit me up, you're like, by the way, dude, perfect example. I do have a friend. I don't want to mention who. You probably know him. He's well known on Twitter. He buys businesses, and he bought the only short form editing service I've used ever was my friend bought an agency, a short form editing agency. And he hit me up and he was like, hey man, do you want to use it? And I used it for a bit, right? But because now Chris and I actually have a rapport, you could go email me next week and be like, hey dude, can I give you a free week of short form editing from our agency? Let me know if you like it. And I'd be like, yeah, sure, run it. Let's go.
Yeah, I'm not even recording right now. I'm just going to sell you in a week.
I bought a website from shout out 72 Hour Sites. I think it's their domain from,
it's my bro.
From Sam. And
we were texting this
Steven,
afternoon.
Who, by the way, was one of the people, same group of people that had the short form content agency that I was using.
Yeah.
Sam's cool dude. You know what I mean? Like we've chatted a million times. We chatted about working together. You know what I mean? Like, and then from there, they got me. I own an SEO agency. We don't do content normally. We do on page and backlinks and mostly backlink building. And he's got another agency that's doing content. You know what I mean? And I was like, oh, then it was like, oh, do you want to try a free month? I was like, sure, I'll try a free month and see if we can upsell it to our customers. But my point is, I guess all of this is like, it's just a little bit about rapport building a little bit in the beginning. Dude, this comes back to go along with you just saying like the hard way is the way. It's like doing the unscalable. Worry about scaling. Worry about how to scale when you're at the point that you cannot do more than what you're doing. But getting in your own way, and I do this myself, getting in your own way from starting something because you're worried about will it scale, and not starting because you're like, oh, well, it's 40 clients, and then our margins are going to be so bad. You know what I mean? Like, worry about that when you get there.
Bro, will it scale? You don't have any money.
Yeah.
Will it make any money?
You don't have any clients. What are you scaling? You know what I mean? Like, worry about reworking your business when you get there. In the meantime, it's just do it. Right. And that's why, and this is going to sound so cheesy, dude, but like, Everyone in the world knows just do it. Everyone knows that slogan. It's so obvious, duh. But I cannot explain. It's like I used to be a smoker. Smoked a pack a day for a decade. Always wanted to quit. There's a saying that it's quitting cigarettes the easiest thing in the world. Done it 1,000 times. Point though is that every time I quit cigarettes, you try, but you can tell. I haven't smoked in years now. I could tell that moment when I really wanted to quit. I think it's true about all addiction. People, you can know you need to quit drinking or quit whatever. It is an internal just, it clicks. One day you're like, it clicks. Oh, I know what this is.
It's like your own personal rock bottom.
Yes. And so what I was going to say about just do it is similarly, it's like, or it's intuition. It's like falling in love. Like you can try to fall in love, but when it just clicks, like, oh my God, I love this person. So my point about just do it as a slogan, the reason just do it is the best slogan of all time is we all get it, just do it. But the moment that it really, really clicked, which was like even just 2 years ago for me, it was like, just do it. Like literally that Shia LaBeouf thing, just do it. Like, the moment that you get that, like truly just do it is like how to accomplish anything you want in your life. To go back to Sam Altman, me preying upon his downfall, but like you can just do things. He said that like you can just do things.
I love saying
do
that.
It,
Dude,
but it's magic.
I had a business partner that took this to the nth degree. We'd be in there talking about a problematic employee, and we're like, okay, what should we do? And then he would just get this look in his eyes. He would just like transform. And he's like, he wouldn't even say anything. He'd just pick up his phone. He's like, hey, you're fired. Okay. All right. Bye.
Wow.
And I'm like, but like, we both knew that was the call,
Yeah.
And it was the hard thing. And it was it was very much like a Band-Aid moment. And he would do that all the time. And it was so cringeworthy because it's so foreign, but it was so admirable at the same time.
I mean, it reminds me, there's a saying I heard recently. It's very applicable. It's true to relationships, true to business, but it's like the longer you stay on the wrong train, the more expensive the ticket to the right one is, And it really is true, right? Like, the longer that you're in a relationship you shouldn't be in, the much more difficult it's going to be to end it and get back to the person that you want to be with. The longer you're in a job you hate, the tougher it is to get to that right place. So so that's a saying I really like. The longer you're on the wrong train, the more expensive the ticket.
I'm still processing that. That's so good.
It's a good one, right? Good.
Oh man, it's so true. It's so funny how you can take a principle that we all know to be true, but you can just put the right words to it, and it just becomes so deep.
Yeah. Well, that's what I feel about just do it, right? Like, and it's just when it clicked for me. That's what I'm talking about. When I said that to you, and you were like, "Whoa," right? Like, it makes sense. You've heard, that's what I mean about just do it. When just do it clicked for me about like, just do it. And I can't explain it. All I can do is keep saying it out loud. It's sort of like epiphany. It's sort of like having an epiphany. That's what it is. It's sort of this like aha moment, right? When it clicks internally that you can just do things. You can just do it. Like the way to do everything. I mean, I hate to say that, and we all have the same opportunity. I hate to say this, but you and I can sit here and I can talk about $100 billion tech ideas. That's how we started into businesses that you and I think anyone could start in a weekend. The truth is, in the digital world, and I could bring this to hands instead, but we all have the exact same keyboard, bro. We all have this is such a magical device here. The truth is that Jeff Bezos had the same keyboard as me and you, bro. It blows my mind sometimes if I press the right buttons in a row in this puzzle. I think of a keyboard as a puzzle. And I think that if I just press the right buttons in the right order, I can create $1 trillion of wealth. And that's true. And if I press the wrong buttons, it does nothing. Right. And so when I think about the businesses that you and I have been thinking about recently, I'm positive, or we're talking about recently, I'm positive if you just press the right buttons, and they're not rocket science buttons, right? If you just press the right buttons, you press the right buttons on this, you make the phone call, you say the right things, and they're very formulaic, right? That $1 million, $2 million a year is just a formula. And it's out there and you know it and you've seen it, right? And this is why when it comes to courses and stuff, for example, some people are like, oh, this is a scam. And other people are like, oh my God, this is so obvious, right? There's few things in a course that are going to be like, oh my God, that was magic that no one's ever heard of. It's very often just, accountability and pushing someone forward and giving them a path to follow. But we all have this same keyboard. The path to 1 or 2 million is not rocket science. You just press the right buttons. You got the same keyboard and mouse. Just press. And again, this sounds silly, but when I distill it to that and I make it that simple, in my mind, it's like, you want to build an agency, you want to build it, that does $1 million a year. Well, here's the only tool you need. It's a keyboard. And if you press these right, yes, you might have to press tens of thousands of the right buttons in a row. But if you just press these right buttons in a row for the right amount of days, you'll make $1 million. And that is not even debatable. It's just true. Then it sort of becomes up to me, just do it. Right. Then it comes to that, just do it. Anyway, sorry. That was my rant.
It's like no, I love that. And like you start by going to your keyboard and typing in youtube.com and twitter.com and start following the right people that are doing what you want to do. And you just start consuming content. And then you won't be able to get your hands off the keyboard. I have an app that tracks how many words I type, and I'm at 8,611 words today.
Wow.
Like 10,000 today. Like I'm using this keyboard a lot. I have worn out the keys of this keyboard. People don't know what to type, right? So you literally you have to start consuming the right stuff, not like the stupid prank videos that you want to not swipe on, but you start by consuming the right stuff. And then you're naturally going to start typing in the right stuff.
100%.
You'll learn. You'll actually have a base to build from.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, dude, that gets me into we could do a whole nother hour, another time on like brainwashing yourself. And I really just believe that like another midwit thing, which is that like mindset is the Jedi and the caveman are both like, mindset's everything. And then midwit's like, that's not possible. And it's just like, nah, bro, mindset really is everything, and like, it's really just, I had this sort of like little spiel I've been on recently about how belief is everything, even winning the lottery, because even winning the lottery requires buying a lottery ticket, which means on some subconscious level, you believe that it's possible to win the lottery. So you couldn't even win the lottery unless you believed you could win the lottery, right? In this scenario. So like having belief, you won't make $1 million unless you believe you can make $1 million. I was once with a friend, we were in New Jersey, his family, his friends, like boat by the Jersey Shore, and passing like big $20 million houses. This was 10, 15 years ago. And he's like, I want to live in one of those houses one day. And I was like, okay, so why don't you make a plan to? No, I didn't have any money at the time, but he was like, oh, well, I'll never live in a house like that. I said, I was like, not with that attitude, you won't. You won't. If you believe that you will never live in that house, you literally will not. You have to at least, believing is not what will get you there, but as a core fundamental baseline, belief has to underlie all of it, because without belief, there's no foundation in which you can build anything on top. So that's
and this is why pessimists sound smart and optimists get rich.
Get rich, yeah, 100%.
To believe, you have to be optimistic. You have to 100%. Hope for a brighter future.
And
everyone in my comments they're pessimists, but not everyone. But oh man, this was good. I literally have a headache right now, and that's always a good signal for how a podcast went, because I'm using my brain. All right, what'd you think? Please share it with a friend, and we'll see you next time on the Kerner Office.